It's not easy living on a dying planet, but it is easy to feel overwhelmed when it comes to making changes and taking action to try and save it. Where do you start? Is it even worth it? Can you really make a difference? Welcome to the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast, where we attempt to answer these questions by spilling the tea on living sustainably in a world that's going to shit. I'm Brandy.
And I'm Hannah. And for years we've been navigating the big, messy grey area of caring about our planet. It hasn't always been smooth sailing, but we're not giving up yet. So, brew yourself a cup of tea, get comfy, and let's try and navigate that grey area together.
Hello, Give a Shitters. This is Brandy.
And this is Hannah, and you are listening to episode number 22 of the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast.
Woo! Hannah told me it was my turn to woo, so that's my woo attempt.
Yeah. We just need to record a wooing sound, put in.
Oh yeah. I don't know, I think it's a bit more authentic based on how we're feeling that day. That'll affect the tone of the woo. I don't know.
I think we're both quite tired this morning.
Yeah, still waking up.
Yeah, I've got my coffee.
Oh, I meant to make another cup.
Tea.
I was going to make either another cup of coffee or tea, but I didn't. Oh well, I'll do it after. Anyway, today we are talking all about decluttering, which our friend Ellie had sparked the idea for this chat, and I think it's a good, timely episode, beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
If you get various Christmas gifts, or maybe you hit the sales and you're making room for new things, or it's just a kind of good way to refresh the year. A lot of people will start with their closets. So I thought it would be a good way to kind of tackle how to declutter. With the planet in mind, because it's easy and nice to think that, I'm donating it so someone else is getting use out of it, but as we will discuss, that is not always the case.
And I think part of when we talked about it, we were talking about it with Ellie, things she brought up was also how do you declutter the awkward things, we kind of maybe have in our minds how we might get rid of, or how we think we can sustainably get rid of something which may or may not be as sustainable as we think. But something, I think I remember her saying she had a skipping rope, what do you do with that? Or you're a jump rope. A skipping rope.
Skipping rope, jump rope. I mean, yeah, I suppose you consider that skipping.
Yeah, it's still definitely skipping.
But you're also
not jumping.
Jumping.
I mean,
your body and feet are leaving the air.
Say,
I guess to me, skipping is you're skipping down a street, down a sidewalk. It's another form. It's not walking. You're skipping down. You're going from one place to another. But I suppose you could. I mean,
that's also how we use skipping. But we definitely use skipping for with the rope. That we wouldn't say jump rope or whatever you guys say.
So I guess the question is, what makes a skip and what makes a jump a jump? Anyways.
And once you're finished with the activity, how do you get rid of skipping rope or jump rope that you no longer want? Or I was thinking, because I was the kind of on the same vein as slightly exercisey things. I was I've got some yoga blocks that I've never used, and at this point I'm I'm probably not going to use them. How would I get rid of them? So it was also about that, how do we declutter some of the awkward things? I'm not really have an answer, or I don't. So
it's hard to have for those awkward things. It's hard to have a general answer, because it'll be so dependent on where you live in terms of if you're trying to recycle it, or but that's I'm thinking more light bulbs and batteries, things you've used. So items that you no longer have a use for that are in good condition. I don't know. It depends on your kind of your circle of friends and family, who do you know might use it. But as far as a place to take it to, that'll be entirely dependent on where you are.
But that's definitely a good said your family and friends, and looking at your circle first is a good way both to just to get rid of things. I mean, obviously if they want it, pressurizing people to take your junk, but also that can be a good place to start for things that you kind of need occasionally, but you don't want to store. You might, if you ask around, there might be someone who you can borrow those things from first. Or, you know, you can, if you're wanting to try out like a new activity, the yoga blocks, you know, if I'd have been able to, like, you know, I'm sure there's someone I know who might have had some that they weren't using, or it's fairly likely. And then I'd have realized, actually, I have zero motivation to do yoga and didn't need to buy yoga blocks. Hard in the moment because it is, you know, we have access to very affordable products financially. Whether they're like affordable on a planetary level is another question, but like so it can be I'll just like pick this thing up, but actually, and it feels like more, you know, it feels harder to like, I'll be like go through that whole process of like asking around, you know, but
yeah, I think
that might be a good place to start.
I think the best way to answer how to declutter better is to answer how to buy better or not buy at all. So like using, like the things you just said, asking around, or using what you have. Maybe, I don't know, there were existing things you could have used as yoga blocks temporarily to see if it was something that like you liked and were going to do. Because I think often we fall into this habit of like, no, I need to buy the thing that's going to allow me to do the thing, like the perfect running shoes. Well, no, you can just run and then see if like, if that sticks. And I think compiling like a list of like whatever questions or resources that like you can go to first before buying something would be like a great kind of little barrier to put into place. But say I don't know, you've done your January or beginning of 2023 declutter. Sorry, door slamming in my building again. What do you do with all this stuff? It's likely mostly clothes. Maybe it is some things like quote unquote skipping ropes. So what do you do with them? Because and when I was researching for this, a lot of it's like clothing focused, the stats and like articles I found, because that is like, I think, one of the more common things people do and do more frequently and more volume. I certainly do. That's what I kind of donate the most. So I think you're at this point now where it probably does feel very overwhelming to think of how to better kind of get these, let's say, clothing items out of your home, because, you know, just taking it to the donation center down the road or charity shop, thrift store, whatever it is, a much smaller percentage than what you think is actually getting resold to someone else to then like get use out of it, which I'll link all the kind of stats I found on that. Which is a shame. Like, it's very nice and easy to think like, oh yeah, like I don't need this item anymore. It's not my style anymore. Maybe it doesn't fit. Let me just donate it. That automatically means it's going to get reused. So that's, I think, where like kind of the guilt comes in. But I remember when we first talked about like the idea for this episode, if like that's where you're at now and you have all this like stuff, maybe mostly clothes to like get rid of, I don't know. Personally, I think it is a bit more motivating to just like kind of swallow that like guilt pill and donate it, knowing that, okay, it's probably going to end up, more of that's probably going to end up like either in a country that, like in Africa, that causes a lot more harm than good, just dumping our stuff on them, or incinerated, landfill, and then like doing better in the future, which might not be the best option. It's not the most planet-friendly option. It would be nice to like do your research and kind of figure out, okay, what's the best thing I can do with these clothing items or skipping ropes or whatever it is around your house, yoga blocks. But if like you just get it out, and then, okay, you take that guilt to then like drive maybe a bit of research and, okay, where can, in the future, where's a better place I can take this item? Maybe old towels I can take to an animal shelter. And then having that list, but then combining that with like, like some questions asked before buying new things, I think would be more kind of impactful and sustainable in the long term. So like, just do the not perfect thing now.
Right.
And then give yourself some time to like kind of do better moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways there's like, in some ways that what you've just said is like kind of inevitable to happen. You know, I mean, I feel like there's definitely times like hung on to like a couple of bags of things. I don't want them. I need to do something with them, but then I haven't. And I've just got to a point where I'm like, I'm just like going to chuck them, you know, or they're just like taking up space. And maybe it's better just to like get to that point intentionally. Like you say, and just being like, okay, I've got all these things. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like hard to say that because it is kind of most of the time like a shitty option. But then, yeah, then on the other hand, like you say, a lot of the things that we do thinking that they're like having a positive impact or that take away our guilt. You know, like, oh, I'm like donating, I'm recycling, etc., etc. They don't really have the impact that we think they have. And even if you've done the research and you know, I mean, you still do. Oh, I still do it.
You need to do something based on that research. So, like, and what that would be would look differently. Because one thought I had was that, yeah, like, it is nice to have that thought that you're going to donate something and have some sort of impact. Like, Goodwill is, like, one of the most popular thrift stores in the U.S. And a lot of the proceeds go to, like, providing jobs and, like, supporting local community. Like, it is good, but, like, I think only about half of, like, the clothing actually gets resold. And then from there, it gets like resold to like other third parties, like what do they call them? Like clothing salvagers, or I forget. On like the article I was reading. And then it just kind of goes down and down from there, whether it gets shipped to another country or incinerated or landfill.
Right. Yeah, and I just think as well. I mean, then this goes back to like buying better. But it's like
go listen to our episode on shopping. We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
You're spending money.
But it's like if you buy better quality clothes, if you can, you know, obviously afford to, then it's likely that when you get to a point when it doesn't fit, it's not your style anymore, whatever, that you'll be able to donate it and it will actually be resold, or someone might genuinely want it. Whereas like the clothes or the very like fashion specific, like trend specific items, then it's obviously going to be harder,
right,
for those items to either have the quality necessary or like to be even interesting to someone, you know,
right? Because a lot of these, like the articles I was reading were saying that like most stores, whether it's a thrift store or consignment stores, places like in the U.S., Buffalo Exchange, Plato's Closet, that they buy your clothes for like a low price, kind of on the spot, and then resell it. That they, especially those, like they can only take like current like trends. So that in a way actually I think perpetuates the like buy what's like in season and then like donate it quickly, because then they're only going to buy it from you.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's like in season, obviously in good condition as well. And
right.
What else was I reading? Oh, that there was a line in an article about like resale apps, which, you know, I am a big fan of Vinted and occasionally have some issues overindulging in it a bit. But there was this article on theatlantic.com, like that. I was talking about the downside of resale apps is that they're a lot of work for the sellers, which is why often I don't bother. She talks about going back and forth to her, like, local post office. Local consignment or resale stores can take some of the legwork out of, like, you know, packaging and going and selling the item, shipping it yourself. The bigger issue is that resale apps and services aren't really... Go away. Sorry, my Grammarly is blocking the next sentence. Is that resale apps and services aren't really a bulwark against overconsumption, even though they feel that way. And even though they're often marketed as such.
Right.
Buying secondhand is definitely preferable to buying and discarding brand new stuff. But if you're constantly cycling through clothes and chasing trends, and you're still just as much caught in the teeth of the fashion system as the rest of us. Which I read that and was like, oh, yeah. Guilty. I feel like I've just substituted, like, you know, shopping at like Primark for Vinted. But I'm still like consuming similarly. So that's another element.
Yeah, that's like a kind of bigger mindset one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've gone back to like the pre-decluttering step though.
Yeah. So I think...
maybe as well, one thing, going back to decluttering, if there's things that you know you don't want and you don't think anyone else will want, or that isn't in good quality to resell or whatever, or donate, then I think this is hard to do, but if you can sometimes break down a product into the separate parts, that increases the chance that something is recycled.
Like what? What were you thinking?
You might. Well, I was just thinking, like, for example, like the skipping rope thing. If it's like a plastic skipping rope, maybe I don't know this, but like, for example, can you like disconnect the handles? Because probably the handles on their own, maybe depending on the type of plastic, it might be possible for them to be recycled. Although plastic recycling is a whole other big issue.
Yes.
Or like removing, like breaking down, or if it's like a kind of like an old school skipping rope with like wooden like rope, like again breaking down those like two separate parts. Like fabric can maybe be recycled. If it's like fabric based, maybe recycled separately. Like together it can't be.
Yeah,
but maybe there's like elements, or if you've got like an electronic item, can you like make sure you like take out the batteries, because those are quite easy to be like a good thing to like try and recycle, like take those to like a battery point at least, like at least take that step.
Right.
Because obviously the more, and this is like just even for your like everyday recycling, like all those things people, and by people I mean me, like to think that can be recycled. Like your milk carton, actually a lot of the time it can't be recycled because it's like two different materials, like which is really hard to separate.
Right.
But if there's some way you can help with that like separation yourself, if it's possible, it might not be possible. Maybe that's a way.
Yeah, or maybe get creative with like how you can reuse something.
I don't know.
So like that skipping rope, like
right.
I'm thinking if that could be helpful in like, I don't know, moving a mattress and tying it down to like the back of your car. I don't know. I don't know why that's a very specific use popped into my head. Well, maybe because I've done that multiple times, and even as secure as you think it is, before you hop on that highway, it's not as secure as you think it is.
Okay. Yeah, but it's true actually. Like, maybe you could use that length of rope, whether it's plastic or like fabric, to do something with it.
Maybe even like designating like some place in your home, whether it's a bin under the bed or a box in your garage, of like, okay, if I don't reuse this, if this is still in the box in however many months, pick a time frame for you, 3 months, 6 months, then okay, then I'll get rid of it, to give it like a chance before just immediately like tossing it. And for electronics, I know like
that's so good.
Sorry.
I was just going to say it was a good point.
Continue.
That was a good point, Brandy.
Thank you, Hannah. For electronics, I know there are in the US an old laptop that I couldn't find someone to use. So I like wiped it as if it was like a factory reset, and then sent it in for free. And they specialize in like recycling the parts of electronics. So that's an option, and that's very dependent on where you are, whether that is available. Yeah, I think...
You know what I saw in Madrid, which is so random, and I didn't know they did this, but beneath the signs, like advert signs, they're kind of thick, and the bottom of them, they have the points for recycling batteries.
Yeah, I've seen those at bus stops.
I was like, that's such like an ingenious like way. I don't know. I hadn't really noticed it until I was with someone who was like doing it, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I think they have like 3. There's like the regular batteries, like AA or AAA. Then I think there's like the tiny ones,
like the circle ones,
flat circle ones. Yeah. And then was the third one for like, I don't know. There are 3. I've only ever used those.
There's like 3 whole. I don't know.
Anyways, yeah. Just keep an eye out, even for aside. Even like in your local grocery store, there might be like a container for batteries.
Or maybe this thing seasonal, which again, this like fits with the like keeping something for X amount of time, obviously if it's like good quality and like usable, but I'm just thinking like again, for example, with like toys or like good quality clothing items, like, you know, if you can keep a hold of that, for example, until like kind of November time, when there's often like drives for like toys or clothes, you know, like winter clothing for homeless, or like toys for children who might not get as much at Christmas. Again, those are quite specific things, but maybe there's things that are more like certain times of the year you're more likely to get rid of them in a way that's like genuinely helpful.
Yeah, that came up in the articles I was reading about, like, don't donate winter clothes in the summer and vice versa. Like, wait until it'll likely like actually get resold. There's a need for it.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. I ultimately think that like you have to do some your own research for like the area you live. Like, where can you take coats? Like, is there an annual like coat drive near you? Is there like, are there animal shelters that you could kind of jot down or like bookmark for like a ticket for future, you know, linens that no longer work, like you don't want for whatever reason. And especially if they're not in great condition, animal shelters would take those. So like, if you want to, like, it's great if you have the energy and time to like do that now, but like if you've done a big declutter and like have all of this shit, then yeah, I'm going back to like, just get rid of it and know and feel like the not so positive impact that it's having. Know that it's not like, you know, sunshine and rainbows, that like all of these things are going to get reused by people, and then using that to drive like your kind of future action. That I think would be a bit more bite-sized. Because ultimately, if you go into buying something, I think it's the mentality of like bringing in new things too. The mentality you have when you bring in new things is like trying to shift from, oh, when I no longer have use for this, I can donate it. I think going into it with the mentality of, this will likely end up in landfill, I think is like a powerful thing that I've heard recently and I want to start implementing. So assuming that, yeah, it will be like landfill. How does that make you feel then about buying the thing or bringing the thing in, whatever it is?
Right. And I definitely, as well, like similar to that, like really recognizing how long that you're buying will be around for, you know, and most things you buy will outlive by hundreds of years. Like, I mean, like most plastics, most fabrics will take hundreds of years more to decompose than you will ever be alive. Which maybe sounds a bit morbid, but it's okay. Is this thing worth it? And it might be. And of course, it's not all on you, because we're in a society where things have been like designed in that way. And those are like the materials that are like available and commonly used, or have been used commonly, even though that's changing. So obviously we're also limited around like what we can buy that's also like affordable. But yeah, those like two factors.
It's interesting. It's like there's
no, I'm like, fuck. Oh shit.
This is like a hard kind of gray area to navigate, because on one hand I'm thinking like what you're saying, like, okay, be kinder like to ourselves, like we're not in a system that's set up to like value things. There's a sociologist in the Minimalist documentary, is that we how did she put it? We are no longer materialistic in like the true sense of the word, but we are like overly materialistic in like the modern sense. So like, okay, the original sense of the word I think she meant is like we value the materials, materialism, like we value and appreciate all of these things. But then like modern day use, and I think I'm totally butchering this, but the modern day use is more of like, it's like, I don't know, how you look, how you appear, keeping up with trends, and obsessed with like having things, the materialism, but like you don't really value the things. So like it's a weird kind of mix. So yeah, we are in some ways like fighting a losing battle, because we're surrounded by like by all this pressure to bring in new things, which I know sounds like a different topic from decluttering, but I think they're very much related. And then because to constantly bring in new things, then you have to then get rid of the previous things. So like this week's trend, like last week's trend is no longer relevant to like this week's trend. So you make room for this week's.
Yeah.
And there's just the sheer volume of stuff. Like, it's hard to sustainably declutter, recycle, when there's just so much of it.
Yeah.
So it's this like,
Right.
okay, be kind to yourself, fighting a losing battle, but also like, then I was saying earlier, like, let that guilt kind of drive future. Like,
it's
I
really,
don't know.
I think it's just like feeling
Does that make sense?
like,
I'm trying to like.
Yeah, no, it does, because I'm just gonna like noting how I write. So I just like said that really harsh thing, which was everything is going to outlive you, so you better be careful about what you're buying. And then I immediately wanted to like remove some of that guilt, right? Like in that, how I just like phrase it. And then I went, but actually, you know, which is also true, but actually we live in a society where it's hard to do that thing. So it's like this like tension. It's like very hard to like stay in that, you know, and also it's hard to stay in that space of like true guilt, true sadness, or like remorse, or like a heavy emotion. There's this like desire, I think, at least in me, but I think other people do it as well, to like then soothe that emotion. But also it's not completely productive to stay in a space of like guilt and shame and like sadness, you know. I don't know, it's like, how do you like navigate those two emotions together? Like,
I don't
know. We live in this system. We need to feel this guilt or this shame or this sadness or this like frustration to like drive action. Or maybe we don't. Maybe that's not what drives action. Maybe it's like hope and like positivity and that we can change.
Yeah, it is tough because society, capitalism, companies like want us to be in this cycle of like consuming and getting rid of, making room for more. So yeah, it is really hard to fight that, but it's, I mean, it kind of goes to the general like trying to like live your values more. It's like recognizing, and like individual action versus corporate action, like recognizing that like they are different things, but they are related, and you can like understand and accept that like, okay, so like society has impacted me negatively when it comes to consuming and like and trashing a large number of things, but I do have a say, and I do have control over like what comes into my home, and then that can like, I think, have a ripple effect of then how people around you start like viewing things, and maybe calling up their local shelter before just trashing their, you know, old towels. So I think, yeah, it ultimately comes down to like, how important is it to you to take better care of your things, and that includes getting rid of them. Like, what happens to them after they no longer have a use for you? Because if we live in a world that like people say you can vote with your dollar, and obviously it's very dependent on your socioeconomic status, like what, you know, buying the like $50 ethically made t-shirt over the $5 one, because that is quite a big difference. You can also choose not to buy something, and then you have less to declutter. So it's hard to like say kind of general things when it is so dependent on like your not just where you are in terms of like the resources you have to like to declutter your items, but like what's important to you.
Right.
So for me, I think the approach I'm going to take is like, I use one of those like granny carts. I don't know what the proper term is for them, you know, like the grocery carts. So I have one to like usually to like bring like cat litter up the stairs, because it weighs a lot. But what I do is I will put like clothing in it that I would like to get rid of and go to HUMANA, which I found some articles on that. I'll link, because I don't think we have time to talk about something I wanted to talk about in that article. Anyway, it's currently full of like clothing that I was getting rid of. Like, I have bins under my bed. I have one bin of things that are too small and one bin of things that like I'm not sure about, maybe out of season. And that's like my limit. What fits in those bins is for that, like those two categories. Like that's my limit. So I'm slowly going through, and I have stuff to get rid of, and I'm going to take it to HUMANA, which is like a chain, mostly clothing, secondhand. But the article, I will say that only 14% of the clothing gets resold. And they are constantly doing like those sale days to like get rid of stuff. Like everything's €4, 3, 2, €1, to bring in the new stuff. So, but I've also been going through, like, since COVID, like, of not just buying to, like, feel like I have some sort of control over what's going on in the world, but also, like, I wear different sizes now, and my style is also changing at the same time, and the type of clothing. So I'm in, like, a bit of, like, a weird period of, like, I am going through more clothing than I might normally.
Than you have been.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm going to try to like, set that new mindset in my brain of, like, okay, this, if I bring this item home, it is unlikely to ever get used by anyone else. And then, like,
right.
The hope is that will lead to fewer items coming in.
Right.
But then, also being kind with yourself.
You might just stay in the shop.
Yeah.
And then just get chucked away.
Yeah.
But also,
So there is no, it's like people's life work balance. There is no, like, kind of, like, destination and then you're there. It's a constantly, like, evolving thing. Like, what do you have the capacity for right now? Do you have the time and energy to sort out your pile of stuff to get rid of, to ensure that it gets either used or recycled properly? Or are you at a time where you just need to get rid of it and then...
Right. And sometimes getting rid of things gives you, like, a lot of mental freedom.
Yes. So
depending on the type of person you are, sometimes just having all those bags piled up can be such a, like, a in your mind that it's also not particularly conducive. Like, it's not productive to have that stuff there.
So I give you, listener, permission to just get rid of it and then put some sort of system in place, simple, sustainable system in place for you to prevent you, like, feeling like this again in the future, feeling overwhelmed by all the stuff that you no longer want. So whether that's setting barriers, questions to ask yourself before bringing items in, or coming up with some sort of resource list of places around you where you can better kind of donate specific items like we mentioned. I don't know what that solution might look like for you, but this mindset thing is what I'm going to try. What about you? We have 3 minutes left.
What am I going to do? Great question. 2 minutes 55. I think, I don't know if there's anything specific. Maybe I'll take that permission to just throw away some things, and also maybe investigate a few more, like, swap. I'm sure there's, like, Facebook swap groups.
Oh yeah, there's so
like,
many
WhatsApp groups. Maybe there's, like, do that research now, like you say, for, like, when I next want something, and maybe, like, keeping a bit of a list of things that I've got in the back of my head that I want to try or want to do. So I'm not just kind of, I'm like an impulsive shopper, I think. Like, I need that thing, and then I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I am too. Absolutely.
Right. So, all right, listeners, let us know. Are you doing a big declutter in Januay? Or a spring,
or February, March, whatever you're listening to this.
Whenever you're listening. Let us know what you've done with the things, or the things that you've, like, found a great solution for, things you find most difficult to get rid of. Let us know. Send us a voice note.
Send us a voice note, theteaonsustainableliving.com/contact. We'll share it in a future episode, or on Instagram at the Tea on Sustainable Living. You know where we are.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Tea on Sustainable Living podcast.
Now, go share it with a friend,
a coworker,
a partner,
a family member,
or whoever.
A pet, your cat,
someone on the street, whoever you think could use a little more support on their sustainability journey. Share it.
You can send them over to our website, theteaonsustainableliving.com. And while you're there, check out the show notes for more info on today's topic.
All right, give a shitters. See you later. Get it? See you later, as in see you later. So funny.
Brandy.